welcome to Radio Nigp. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Here at Radio Nigp, the words for today is work-life balance. Work-life balance can be defined as the equilibrium between your personal life and your career work. As procurement professionals, sometimes it can be difficult to find balance in our career work. One way to find balance is by aligning the procurement goals and objectives with those of your agency. This is only one example of a way that we can find our balance. But I'd like to ask you to stick around and listen to the rest of our show, because I'm sure you'll find more examples that you can use to help you find your perfect work-life balance. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you back here real soon.
Well, welcome back to this month's Hot Topic. We'll be talking about supplier training. And you're probably asking, as soon as I said that, what does supplier training have anything to do with work-life balance? So let me just share a story, and that is we typically think about providing training to our employees, our staff, and also even our internal customers. And the purpose behind it is really to make sure that our staff and our internal customers are up to date in terms of best practices, etc. But why not our suppliers, right? Wouldn't it be beneficial for us if we do a better job of educating our supplier community? And I mean, bottom line, wouldn't it be if they understand and speak our language, meaning that they'll be able to provide better responses to our solicitations, wouldn't that make our solicitation process more efficient, which thereby saving us time and ultimately giving us more time for life, right? So I'm going to turn this over to Dave and Dawn.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that when we're talking about relationships, which is exactly what it is with a vendor, that if that relationship is smoother and there's more collaborative as opposed to antagonistic, it makes our lives a lot easier, a lot better. Just for a short story, back in the old days, back when I started in purchasing, during the 80s, it was almost forbidden for us to talk with vendors outside of, just opening a bid or whatever, or complaining to them about service. During the 90s and early 2000s, and even more so in the last 5 to 10 years, that relationship has gotten a lot better, where we're talking more with the supplier community. And like you say, speaking the same language, learning how to speak the same language. I think one of the eye-opening experiences for me was when the NIGP Business Council did the white paper, We Know Bid, and I'll tell you why. Because it was the first time I was able to sit down with some suppliers on a national scale, actually, and talk to them about what it was that we were doing that was causing them problems, and what they were doing that was causing us problems. Again, if you don't know the same language, if you don't speak the same language, if you don't know each other's pain points, then how can you work together? Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about, is relationships and working together to find solutions to our problems. We're not just buying stuff anymore. We're looking for solutions to better the world. And good communications, good vendor training is the key to that. Mm-hmm. Dave, what are your thoughts?
I've always had this little statement that I've made when I've been teaching NIGP classes, and I call it my devil is not the vendors are not the devil speech. They're simply trying to participate in the procurement process. They're trying to make a buck. They're trying to put their kids through school. They're trying to take a vacation, pay their mortgages, their car payments, and everything else. And yet, yes, sometimes it can be, sort of a pain, especially cold calls, when vendors come in and want to sit down and talk. I mean, we only have so much time during the day, but it never really bothered me, even cold calling, for a vendor to come in and talk. And I had a set speech about how they could participate in the process with my agency, which was the city of Fort Lauderdale at the time. And that was what they were looking for. And over time, as Don says, that relationship, I think, has gotten better in that we provide information to vendors. We want them to understand how our process works. We put how to do business brochures, or whatever you want to call them, up on our websites. So it's easy for them to go in there and get connected. So it having them understand how our process works and letting them tell us how their business process works, I think is very helpful. And we were chatting a little bit earlier before we came on, and Kevin brought up an interesting thing that I had forgotten about, was reverse trade shows. You want to mention that a little bit about that real quick, Kevin?
Yeah, I think it's putting the purchasing professionals behind the counter, and then obviously the vending community, or the folks walking around about the trade shows, to talk to us freely in terms of about anything and everything that they can provide to us as an agency. What a great opportunity that was. And gosh, I think that was early 2000 was when I got into it, and it was an amazing process, just because it saved me a bunch of time, having to be in one spot, but goodness gracious, it was saving the vendors, the suppliers, a lot of time, because they don't have to spend money. They don't have to spend a lot of time and money traveling to all the various agencies. And so that was the echoing message that I got from the trade show. But it's also a great opportunity during that process to provide training sessions.
Yes.
As part of that process, so they can speak to the procurement folks when they went in between training sessions, and or they can just go to the training session and learn more about how to actually respond to solicitations and what to look for. And understanding, as Don mentioned earlier, understanding that same language that we speak in the procurement world, and by speaking that same language, I think that helps both of us to better communicate with each other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we did reverse trade shows, my chapter, for years, and had training sessions. One what was pretty common to all of us was how to do business with government.
Yep.
I think most of us have got one of those, and then we did a second one on how to respond to RFPs, because that's, talk about a complicated process. And did you have RTSs in your area?
Yeah, we have the Mississippi chapter has a reverse trade show every year. In fact,
Okay.
it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, had a good showing of people. Got a bunch of business cards, and been in communication with several of the people since I got back to the office. So yeah.
It's interesting you brought up the white paper that's out there on the NIGP website about we know bid and why. I was talking to here a couple of weeks ago, John Statola from Toro is on the NIGP Business Council, he brought that up. And one of what they felt was the value in that. And one of the other things he talked to me about was there's a supplier training certification that NIGP has put out there recently. They tried this a few years ago, and because it was on site, the vendor had to travel someplace to take the training. It kind of didn't wasn't quite as successful as they hoped it would be. So there's a new product out there, actually two of them, that's online that vendors can register for. And they do that, it's like self-paced online. One of them is 7 hours long and the other is 12 hours. And I think it's for agencies out there to take a look at that, what the actual training is. So educating our buyers and giving them an opportunity to understand what our processes are and why we have to do things the way we do, sort of, the how to do business with government thing, to circle back around to that.
I think the certificate program is just it's phenomenal, in really, again, educating our supplier base so that they or our supplier community so that they understand our language, understand how we do things, understand how to submit proposals, how to submit or how to put a proposal together so that it makes it easier for us to understand and for us to evaluate and score, etc. And so I think having that certificate program gives them that foundation to be able to do those things very well, and at the end of the day, ultimately will help us save time during the procurement process, during the solicitation process. Things that what we need to do is also is utilize the resources that are out there. So as it, we don't have to worry about it if we don't have the time to educate the supplier in terms of how to respond to a particular solicitation that we currently have out there. One of the agencies or the organizations that I've used in the past is PTAC, which is funded by federal funds, I believe. And so PTAC, it stands for Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, and they have offices throughout the country. So I've utilized them quite a bit. So if I have a supplier that may be new or not understanding the process very well, and I just don't have the time to actually invest half an hour or an hour to train them, I just put them in contact with PTAC, and they actually will look at the solicitation, that specific one, and then help them walk through that entire process, which they could be spending hours with them on how to put that together. So the process of training our suppliers, we learn, and as the three of us being instructors, right? When we're in a class teaching, many times I would say 99% of the times I learn something in that process of teaching, and this is exactly the same. And in educating our suppliers, we in the process learn about the suppliers and how we could do a better job with our solicitations, with our process, so that everybody wins in this process. So thank you all very much. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time. So one of the things that what we need to do is also is utilize the resources that are out there. So as it, we don't have to worry about it if we don't have the time to educate the supplier in terms of how to respond to a particular solicitation that we currently have out there. One of the agencies or the organizations that I've used in the past is PTAC, which is funded by federal funds, I believe. And so PTAC, it stands for Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, and they have offices throughout the country.
Cool.
I've utilized them quite a bit. So if I have a supplier that may be new or not understanding the process very well, and I just don't have the time to actually invest half an hour or an hour to train
Right.
them, I just put them in contact with PTAC, and they actually will look at the solicitation, that specific one, and then help them walk through that entire process, which they could be
Oh,
spending
wow.
hours with
Yeah.
them on how to put that together. So there are
Wow, that's
resources
incredible.
out there,
Yeah.
that can help all of us too, and at the same time help the supplier. So
Cool. Any other thoughts you want to share, Don, with
Just the whole concept of working with the vendors, suppliers, helping them to get educated. One thing I had heard about was NIGP class. I can't remember who was teaching it, but there were actually suppliers in the class along with the purchasing professionals.
Right.
And I just thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
I would love to teach a class like that with both sides there, so that you could share ideas. I mean, getting different people's perspectives helps me to formulate my own ideas better.
Right.
And in a teaching environment, I think that would just be so special. So I'm hoping that more of that will take off in the future, as well, obviously online classes, but once we get back to face-to-face classes, I think that'd be really fun, not only in the class, but afterwards, and like we're going out to dinner at night or something like that, having the suppliers and the purchasing people there sharing ideas and perspectives.
Yeah, I've always found that interesting. At our reverse trade shows, we often do lunch. And we're encouraged to, go to a table where your procurement buddies are, but it's obviously vendors, and I had some great conversations. Again, I come back to this. They aren't the devil. They're just trying to figure out how we do that. That's why they're there in the first place. They're trying to figure out how this process works and what can they do to solve a problem that we got, which is the solicitation.
And
the service that we're buying. So
absolutely, and at the end of the day, we learn from each other, as I think Don mentioned a few times in here, that in the process of training our suppliers, we learn. And as the three of us being instructors, right? When we're in a class teaching, many times I would say 99% of the times I learn something in that process of teaching, and this is exactly the same. And in educating our suppliers, we in the process learn about the suppliers and how we could do a better job with our solicitations, with our process, so that everybody wins in this process. So thank you all very much. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.
Keith, I think we're going to switch gears now, and I think we should probably ask Carrie some questions about the forum that's the Leadership Summit. Do you want to start that off?
Sure. Carrie, what is the Leadership Summit, and should I attend if I'm not in charge of a professional function? If I'm not a director or manager at my organization, should I attend the Leadership Forum?
So good questions, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. The Leadership Summit is really a much different experience than what a typical forum would be. So if you've been to forum and you've participated in workshops, you have a speaker or a set of speakers, a panel, maybe having conversation, discussing a topic, maybe some Q&A at the end. The Leadership Summit is an immersive experience. The expectation is that folks will show up and be ready to contribute to conversation. There will be lots of group activity. The setups will be different. You're not going to be stuffed in a room like sardines in a theater setting for 200 people to listen to a speaker. It's basically think tank sessions, lots of strategy discussions. As I said, we're going to have, hopefully everyone will leave with a toolkit and an action plan when they get back to their office, and we'll be excited to implement that plan. If you're not in a leadership position, I wouldn't say that you're not qualified to attend. If you feel that you are a trailblazer in the profession and you want to, you want to be in that environment where there are lots of leaders that are in the profession already and you want to learn from them, we certainly would not tell you to not attend. But everyone who plans to attend this summit needs to understand that it's a very immersive networking type of experience where you're going to be talking a lot to lots of individuals, but you're also going to be learning a lot.
Carrie, say I'm not a leader in my organization, but I look to be a leader. I want to know what's available within NIGP as a future leader. Is it beneficial for me to attend the Leadership Summit from that standpoint?
That's an interesting question. Being a leader, let me clarify. Are you asking if you want to be a leader within NIGP, should you attend Leadership Summit?
Correct.
Okay. So if you want to be a leader in NIGP, one of the best ways to get started is to go to our website and find out about volunteer opportunities. We have a talent council who is wonderful at receiving folks' applications or areas of interest and what they want to do and how they want to participate. So that would be the first way to do it. Unlike a normal forum, the volunteer opportunities are going to be sort of smaller this year. We won't, Keith mentioned our quality control team, QCT, is going to be a little different this year because we have a limited number of folks and a limited number of rooms. But I would say if you want to be a leader with an IGP, you start out at the website, put in an application, tell us what your areas of interest are, and have our talent council review those and put you in a place where you can kind of get started and move from there. We also have a group on Facebook. It's a mentorship group. So if you check us out on Facebook, you should be able to get to that. And you can have a mentor assigned to you and work with that person to develop your leadership within the organization.
Thank you.
All right. And Carrie, you said that there's definitely going to be a difference in the content and the way that the content is delivered in the Leadership Summit. Are you at liberty to discuss what the different tracks are at the Leadership Summit? And because you had mentioned that you want people to stay in one track once they're at Leadership Summit.
Yeah, sure. So for the Leadership Summit, the education themes are diversity, equity, and inclusion, finance and strategic planning, workforce development, supplier collaboration and innovation, and sustainability. So those are the 5 themes that will be offered. And having someone pick one of those themes to go throughout is really what we're working toward. And more information about how you get to sign up and how you get to select those will be forthcoming to those folks who are registered for Leadership Summit.
How many people are currently registered, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, early bird registration ended June 1st, and that's usually the driver. So we have about 200 people, which is a little less or a little more than half of what our expectations were. Our seating limit is 350. So it is going to be a more intimate group, which is part of the design around this new event and the immersive learning. So we're getting there, and we hope that folks are looking forward to getting back to in person, and will continue to consider registering throughout this period.
And Keith, do you have any more questions about the Leadership Summit?
Yes, I do. But well, let me backtrack. I have some questions. I have a follow-up, but it's not directly involved with Leadership Summit. I wanted to know, Carrie, if somebody wanted to participate in forum, and I know that in the past there was QCT and other things, how could we go about and I said we, including myself, to encourage people to start looking at opportunities to get more involved and get more engaged in forum. Will there be something going out about the opportunities to, like in the past, it was QCTT team? Is there other opportunities that I could share with my colleagues who are maybe sitting on the sidelines, and encourage them to get more involved with forum, and also not just forum, but NIGP on a deeper level?
Yeah, so forum this year does look a little bit different. As I said, involvement in virtual is, I think, important to stick around for those informal networking events. We're going to be doing some fun things that I'm not at liberty to announce yet because we're still working out the details, but definitely participate in any of those sort of live interactive sessions. Put your camera on, introduce yourself, say where you're from, and you can change your name on Zoom, and I can say Carrie Ron NIGP or Carrie Ron and where I live or where I'm from, so that folks can connect with you that way. With the Leadership Summit, the quality control team is going to look a lot different this year. We do need folks there to help us sort of manage crowds and direct people, to your earlier point about I'm going to this meeting, I'm going the wrong way. We definitely need people to help direct folks to specific activities and events. The opportunity to get involved at Leadership Summit, I think, is by virtue of registering, because you are going to be making connections. You're going to be at tables talking to people. That's what this whole event is about. So you're going to be involved just by virtue of registering. With regard to volunteering, we are going to be asking folks to help us out in the rooms, the breakout sessions, with note taking. Picking out the key points. What were some of the best takeaways? Maybe the top 3 or top 5 takeaways that the group reports out on at the end of the session, because we're going to be doing some fun stuff with that too that we'll announce later on. But those people will have an opportunity to volunteer, and if they are really good at kind of picking out those take notes and do the top themes, we'd love to hear from them. We're going to be putting information out shortly about how to sign up in that capacity.
Great, thank you.
Carrie, I can't thank you enough for all of the information that you shared with us today. And I don't have anything further to ask. If Keith does, then this would be the time.
The only thing I have to maybe follow up with that is it possible that I could get information on the volunteer opportunities that are available, so I can maybe talk to people at my local chapter and some of the other agencies around here to find maybe there's something of interest to some people, that if I have a specific topic or a specific function that they would, maybe that would catch somebody other than QCT or something else, or Leadership Forum, because I think that may be a little bit too much for a person to grab at a virtual part. But if there is something that is specific, and maybe a lot of times people say, well, I want to get involved, but I don't want to get involved and be that committed, maybe on a smaller level.
Yeah, sure. So we have getting involved on a smaller level. We like to call that episodic volunteering. So if I want to be involved, but I don't want to get on a committee or a council or the board and commit, 2 years of my time, I can maybe volunteer for a task force. We have several of them. Maybe you're interested in the awards program that NIGP has. You can be part of the awards committee who, works at a very specific time within a specific time frame. Same with scholarship. If you're interested in helping decide, we gave out several scholarships. I think we gave 120 scholarships for Virtual Forum and 9 for Leadership Summit. We had a committee of folks who participated in assessing those applications. So there are opportunities to volunteer on a much smaller scale. including when we get back to normal, QCT at Forum, which will go back to looking a little bit more like it did in the past. But you have opportunities to meet lots of folks and give back in a way that's meaningful for you. And if it's a short-term commitment, we have those opportunities available. Those are all listed on our website, and the application is there for anybody who's interested in volunteering and working with their peers and on leadership activities that NIGP has to offer.
Thank you, Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely sounds like NIGP is an organization where you get out of it what you put into it. So again, Carrie, thank you so much for your time. And Keith, thank you so much for your time too.
Thank you. Anytime.
Thank you.
I like doing it.
So today we're talking with Keith about the NIGP Mentorship Program. Keith, hello and welcome to Radio NIGP. What is the program and how did it come to be?
Well, Victor, that's a good question. The NIGP Mentorship Program, actually we started about 3 years ago when the NIGP Governing Board and the Talent Council recognized the need to respond to what we call the graying of our profession. As a result of many members that are baby boomers and older starting to retire from the profession. And we also saw a need to maintain level of sustainability of the profession as a whole. So we put together our first discussions back in January of 2019. And about a year later, we put together our first mentor-mentee matches. And in January of this year, we launched the program at the beginning of February with about 25 matches.
And it sounds like it's been a great program. And if someone was interested, what would they get out of being part of this program, either as a mentor or a mentee?
Well, what we're hoping for is we're hoping that the program will help our participants create stronger professional relationships and networks. The program itself, we looked for the relationship to build trust and respect to facilitate what we consider lifelong learning. We want to promote diversity of thought and critical thinking skills. And we'd like to provide mentees, very importantly, with a coaching experience and the tools to be an effective and efficient procurement professional and leader down the road. And we want to provide them with supplemental learning channels that promote brainstorming opportunities by providing access to many seasoned procurement professionals who we feel can offer encouragement and career development advice to the mentees. And finally, we want to promote an environment where the learner, the mentee, feels empowered, confident, and hopefully better equipped to perform in the workplace and life in general.
Well, this sounds very interesting, and I'm very interested myself in becoming a mentor. I don't know if you could tell I'm a seasoned procurement professional, and I would love to pass on my information to someone that's coming up new in the field to show them some roadblocks that maybe I hit that can help them move along and up in their profession. Where could I get some more information?
Well, we keep it all on the NIGP website, and the link is www.nigp.org/events/mentorship, where you'll actually be able to apply when we are issuing calls for mentees and mentors. Right now, we have a call to mentors because we had so many mentees respond in our first call that we still need the mentors to accommodate those mentees. And we're in the process, as we speak, of matching right now the next group. And we do issue calls when we have vacancies. They'll often be through NIGP emails that go out on a regular basis. And of course, through that website. And we can provide you with some other opportunities in the interim. If you're not able to get right into the program, if you go to that same website, you can join our Facebook page. And we promise you, we won't be too hard. We ask a couple of questions. We have a couple of questions we'd like you to answer that help us to determine your interest. But they're not hard, and we're pretty fast with letting you in that site. And I believe we're up around 500 members already on the Facebook site. So that's a good place to wait until the call comes. And it's a good place to be able to communicate with others now about your concerns and thoughts, because believe me, there are enough mentors or potential mentors on there that if you put an issue up on the site, somebody's going to respond to it. I promise that.
Definitely. So this is the debut of the Way to Grow segment with Radio NIGP. What can we expect to see in this segment in upcoming shows?
Well, we hope to have some success stories in the program. We're going to be looking at discussions with some of our actual mentees and a discussion with a mentor or two. And we hope to be able to use this segment to show everybody how you can grow through the NIGP mentorship program, either by participating or by supporting it.
Sounds like an excellent segment and an excellent program. Again, if you want more information, the website is listed on the screen. Keith, we look forward to your next segment, and welcome to Radio NIGP.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Legally Speaking. I'm here with Richard Pennington and John Walton, and we're here on the episode that's talking about work-life balance. And so what's legal about work-life balance? I don't know quite, because in legal practice, we don't have a life balance, right? It's a different thing, but I think it's important for us to talk about priorities, how priorities get set, and how legal influences our work life and our suffering through our work life. And it's important. And what I'd like to do is give a little bit of background to get the story started, and then we'll talk to John and then Richard about some of their perspective on the same things. So John, how do the differences in the role of attorney and the contract officer affect handling stress and setting priorities for you?
Well, thanks, Mike. I want to talk about how it's been working kind of in my state agency, which is where I work, and kind of talk about just sort of the last year or so. We've had lots of COVID response work that we needed to handle on top of our regular workload. And like most places, we just don't have the level of staffing needed to handle everything immediately as it comes in. And on top of that, it seems like this bit about the priorities and the ordering of them, it seems like it keeps shifting all the time, at least every week. So in other words, we've got rapidly changing, competing priorities. And this is a dynamic. It's understandable to everybody. It puts stress on our program staff and on our procurement staff, and also on the attorneys that review our contracts. So I'm guessing this is all sounding pretty familiar to most of our listeners. Now, I've done two things to cope with that, one personal and one organizational. On the personal level, I tried to internalize something that I probably heard while watching a Star Wars movie, where they give, wise sounding advice to students that are training to be Jedis. Or maybe I just made it up, I don't know. But I try to picture myself as a leaf that's floating along a raging whitewater river. And I know that the river is really big and fast and sometimes will spin me around, but I am going to just remain on the surface and just try to enjoy the ride. I'm not going to worry about what the river does. And I think that work is always going to be there and it will always take care of itself, but I need to take care of myself. Organizationally, I tried to bring a little bit more rationality to our priority setting process. Years ago, I asked our senior management team to meet weekly to look over all the contract requests that we were working on and go ahead and arrange them in the order that they wanted to match our agency priorities, our big picture needs. Of course, prior to doing that, every internal client would come to the procurement staff directly, and they'd always ask, well, how long will it take? And they'd make their individual case for their importance. But now with this new process, all program staff know they need to provide their own managers with objective, factual info about the completion deadlines and the impacts or the consequences for their project. And those managers funnel that info up to the priority decision makers. Much better. Now, we also feed that priority information to our attorneys so that they can use it to arrange their own work, because they have like competing priorities as well, and lots of different clients. And so far, they really seem to appreciate that. So that makes me think, Richard, does that trigger any thoughts for you? How do you see that priority challenges have changed maybe in the pandemic era?
Yeah, it's kind of odd because I had the same experience in large firm practice that Mike did, and I left the law firm, say 10 years ago. And at that time, this is of course pre-COVID, we still were primarily having virtual relationships with our clients. We didn't meet that many of them. And so that was still being done that way, although the BlackBerry was being used, not iPhones and other devices. The other part that I really agree with Mike on was the time pressures, and we had that in the law firms big time. I was on a clock for the last really 20 or 10 years of my practice. When I was in Air Force JAG, we were budgeted separately, didn't worry about clocking in and clocking out of time. When I got into the AG's office, the Attorney General's office, so I was in a similar role really as Mike. We were on a clock because we had to actually bill the clients. They were budgeted with the amount of money, and that drove some perverse incentives like it does really in any kind of fee-based service. The more you spent in time, the more money you made for your budget. And that was one perverse incentive. And the other one was they only paid me for what I had to do by regulation. And the only thing regulation I had to do is to do contract reviews. I did 3,000 a year. And the clients couldn't really use me for just procurement advice because they were budgeted to do contract reviews. That's the way they budgeted based on historical practice. And it was kind of awful, to be honest with you. And that drove that sort of a perverse behavior, I think, in terms of what I was spending my time on. It really wasn't a risk-based approach. Well, you know what? I didn't think this way as a lawyer. I thought in terms of my professional conduct rules, my rules of professional responsibility, that really they value competence and zealous representation. And that's why in private practice, if any of you have been around law firms that advise your agencies, even though they were called drafts, they didn't come out of our office as a draft until they were almost perfect. So we were spending a lot of time doing that. Well, the competing value was time. And I got to say, the time really wasn't as big a concern. That's why I had a queue system. Interesting to hear you talk about that, John. We had a queue system for my 3,000 contracts, and what came in first was what got reviewed first. We didn't have a principled way to approach that priority, unlike what it sounds like you've done. So what I depended on were the clients that were coming in to explain to me what the time crunch was in a way that I could tell others why it was I was moving somebody else's contract up the queue and doing that one earlier. So I needed things like, well, we've got a lease that is expiring and we're going to have to extend it by a month if we can't get this new lease in place. That's the reason, Richard. Or we got a new requirement levied on us by the city manager, or in my case, the governor, that we hadn't anticipated. That's the reason for the priority. And I think if I were to tell you anything in terms of behavior, you need to communicate to your attorneys, and attorneys, whether they're on the public side, especially if they're fee-based, or especially on the private side, if you have those, that whole relationship is really affected by the billable hour. So ask for and justify requests for priority. So Mike, I'm just curious, anything there you disagree with, or does that trigger any thoughts by you?
Yeah, I'll tell you, there are two things, and one, I love John's parable about the river, and the way I handle that stress personally is I beat on wood and make it into the shape of a boat, right? And then I take that boat in the summertime and I drift on the tide up on the Chesapeake Bay. And one of the things you learn really quick is you better work hard against the tide when you're going out so it can bring you back home. right? Because if it's going the other way, you're going to have a whole lot harder time getting home. So that idea of giving people a priority, giving people direction is really helpful. But one thing I've learned is that as chief procurement officer, I have to be really careful, right? Like I don't ask for priority on things, but once every month or so, depending on the attorney I'm talking to, because I don't want to be, was it Chicken Little crying that the sky's falling, right? If every contract's a priority, then none of them are, right? So you've got, that's what you do. You fall into first in, first out if everything's a priority. That's all you can do as the lawyer. So I choose carefully and choose sparsely, right? Choose only occasionally to ask for that help. John, any additional thoughts or conclusions?
I'm so delighted you talked about that kind of relationship management, that you don't try and make everything a priority, because of course people just get burned out on that. And that seems to fit. It seems like we're all kind of on the same page here. One lesson that comes home to me over and over again is that we do our work by partnering with others. None of our entities' operations gets accomplished without several people partnering together. And effective partnering, in turn, is sort of heavily dependent on good communication, right? Honest communication. So within our conversation, that means communicating fully about what goes into setting the priorities for our work, and not just that this is urgent, but here's the order in which all of these things can fit together. My dream job would give me all the time I need to handle all the demands, but I doubt that job exists. So I believe I'll always have to keep making choices, really, based on what's most important for my employer. But I can't do that very well in isolation. So the more we all share the same understanding of where to focus our efforts, the more likely we are to get the really important stuff accomplished. That's, to me, the lesson of what we've been talking about. I want to say thanks to both of you for your thoughts on this topic. And of course, we invite listeners to post their own on Insight. But until we meet again next time, that's it for Legally Speaking.
So long,
thanks.
Guys.
Hello, Denise. Welcome to Radio NIGP, and welcome to our brand new segment called Visionary Views. Could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate that. My name is Denise Finn, and I am the procurement manager for the city of Fort Myers, which is a fast-growing city of currently about 90,000 people. I have a staff of 6, including myself, that take care of the centralized procurement for the city of Fort Myers.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Okay. I've been certified by NIGP and the UPPCC. I also have a history of experience in airports and higher education.
That's awesome.
I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Great. So, as you know, one of the reasons we selected you to do this first interview is because we feel like from our engagement with you, you've definitely demonstrated how your agency has really pivoted in the middle of a pandemic. So can you tell us a little story about that?
Of course I can. The city of Fort Myers was actually very lucky because we had moved to a totally electronic procurement methods just before the pandemic hit. So we were receiving all of our solicitations electronically. We were using electronic means for our contracts, and everything else was done, via email. So when the pandemic hit and we moved from working in our office to, hey, you're going home and you're not coming back until we don't know when, it was fairly seamless. The city forwarded all of our office phones to our cell phones and provided the necessary means for us to work from a home office. So everyone has their own laptop and everyone has a screen. at home so that they can still have two screens like we do in the office. In fact, many times people would call us and they'd say, "Oh, you're in the office? I'm really surprised." And we'd say, "No, actually, we're working remote." And they couldn't even tell that we weren't there. It was really, really great. And our service actually improved from working from home. I found that my team came together so well during this time of a challenge, and they worked better together apart than they worked better together. We used Teams for all of our internal conversations. We had a weekly meeting that we used Zoom, and we had a lot of really good conversation, a lot of communication, and I think our communication improved during that time. So then when we came back to the office, there were some challenges at first because the camaraderie that we had during the time working remotely seemed to have gotten lost when we came back. And there was some stress between different staff members. Some people were not showing up to work on time. Some people were thinking that they were working harder than other people. And we didn't have that click that we had when we were working remotely. So we had to work on that. And we've continued to work on that since then. And just now, after doing some changes in the office, doing some renovations, some painting, new carpet, making everything look fresh and new, my staff is finally excited to come back to work again.
That's awesome, Denise. So you said when you had to go home and when you had to come back, can you recall exactly how far in between when you actually had to go back? Because some of us are still working from home.
Right. We went back, it's probably been about 2 months ago now. So we weren't at home for a long time, but it was long enough to get comfortable working from home. We were really lucky that our IT department supported us and provided all city workers with what they needed. So we were probably working remotely for 2.5 months, I would say. That's an estimate.
Wow, that's a really quick turnaround to come back from home to office.
Yeah, it was. It was a quick turnaround. And at first it was challenging because I had some staff that really did not want to come back. People weren't fully vaccinated yet. And, we were having to wear masks while we were at the office, unless we were in our own offices away from everybody else. So it made it kind of challenging to come back to work. Now that basically just about everybody is fully vaccinated, masks are no longer required in City Hall. And it's a real challenge to leave my office without grabbing a mask. I'll get up and look around for my mask, or if somebody's coming in my door, I'm looking for my mask and then going, "Oh, that's right, I don't need that anymore."
So can you talk about that vaccination? Did the city mandate then that they show proof before they come in the building? Because that's definitely another talk in other hallways to go.
You know what? The city did not mandate it, but they did offer it to all employees. So the city got the vaccinations, and we have, the fire department who has the ability to give the vaccinations. And we had departments come in one by one, and we offered transportation and did everything but stand on our head to get everybody vaccinated. They did not mandate it, and there are some people that are still not fully vaccinated. through the grapevine. Most everybody knows who those people are,
Mhm.
but they decided that it wasn't necessary.
Okay, good to know. So you talked about the, the minute you guys had to go home, they provided the screens. So was that like you were allowed to come back in the office one time and grab all your stuff, or did they ship it to your homes?
Actually, many of us already had the laptops, or some people use their home computers. Myself, because I do consulting, I already had an office set up in my house and had the 2 screens. So I basically just unplugged one laptop and plugged in the other one when I was working on city business. Some of the other people weren't as lucky as I were. So as soon as they had the equipment available to them, we kind of had a way of transferring it where they would call us and say, okay, I'm in the parking lot. And we'd say, okay, I'm going to take it outside. We would take the equipment outside, set it down on the curb, back away from it, watch them come and get it, and then they would take it home.
Great.
Yeah, it worked out well.
So to sum it up, what's the current state of affairs today, and what are you looking forward to in the future?
Well, there's a lot of changes going on at the city right now. We have a new city manager that started about a week and a half ago. We have 2 new members on our city council, and we have a new mayor. So our saying now is the future is bright in the city of Fort Myers. In fact, we all have sunglasses that say that on them. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to rebuild the rapport within the team. Like I said, we did some renovations in the office, and most of my staff are in cubicles. And it used to be that the cubicles were back to back and the openings were facing walls. Well, I said, why are we doing this? We got all this space. So we took them apart and we put the back of the cubicle up against the wall on each side, so now they're facing each other. And I moved people in different locations and put people together, and I can hear more conversation from my office. I can hear more team building. They're getting together, they're doing things together. We have a conference room, but we brought in a little round wooden table that seats like 4 or 5 people. And that's our place. We just get together and talk about things. So I think the communication is really improving. And I think COVID taught us a lot. It taught us what our strengths were, and that we were able to make the changes that we needed to be successful. And now we're learning that we have to make some additional changes to continue that success from back in the office. But we're all heading in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all that wealth of knowledge that you've shared with us. And that's our Visionary Views, Denise Finn. Thank you so much for participating. Have a great
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Rosewood Elementary School. What can I really share about Rosewood? It actually is a long-standing institution. It predates integration. It has a rich tradition, and it's special in that it's nestled in downtown Columbia, Columbia, South Carolina. And it serves among the most affluent and the least affluent families in the city. Early in 2000s, the principal there was Ted Wachter. And so Ted was just as much a part of the tradition of that school as the historic brick building. In fact, for that community, Ted himself was an institution. He started actually working at the school in 1976. And what's interesting about Ted is that he was a very liberal thinker working in a very conservative community. Prior to getting to Rosewood Elementary, he actually participated in anti-Vietnam War protests. Ted had a very thick Northern accent, I believe Brooklyn, which at that time especially could be off-putting to strict Southerners. Ted shunned traditional educational values such as honor rolls. He didn't do them. They didn't have those at Rosewood when he was there. And he shied away from leveling activities such as putting the best students in groups and the less performing students in separate groups. More than anything else, Ted worked hard to level the playing field among all his students without regard to race, gender, and economics. He made that very plain. And in fact, one of his PTO parents in the 2000s, towards the time of this story, even said that Ted wanted to make sure that every student in the school felt smart, or at least felt good about themselves. Again, Ted was a fixture in the community. Everybody loved him. By the time the 2000s rolled around, Ted was teaching children. Ted was a principal of a school of children whose parents he taught, or even grandparents that he taught. He had been there for about 30 years when he received a new supervisor in Dr. Jake Sello. Dr. Sello got there following the hiring of Superintendent Dr. Ronald Epps. Of course, in educational institutions, you'll see that when superintendents come into new positions inside an organization, they will hire cabinet members who will carry forth their vision. And so that was, what Dr. Sello was there to do. In any case, Dr. Sello proved himself not to be a very good change for Ted. He questions Ted's motives. He questioned his strategies. He questioned his performance. He questioned student performance. And he also questioned the devotion to the students that Ted did not. He implied or expressed that Ted did not care equally for all of his students. And Dr. Sello's actions were questionable in themselves. There's reports that he mistreated other principals. He talked to them harshly while they were in meetings, team meetings, in front of one another. He was very, harsh. I was going to use the word brutal, but we'll say harsh. And was disrespectful to his principals when they were in team meetings. For Ted, what that meant was he was giving lackluster performance evaluations. One could even say derogatory performance evaluations. Again, there was allegations of harassment, and there was even a time when Ted walked away from a performance evaluation, and following that meeting, Dr. Sello changed it and had his administrative assistant, Jackie, to sign Ted's signature. Many of us have been there, right? In situations where our supervisors don't respect us, or, we get to the point where we're being harassed, or we're feeling that we are being treated unfairly. So what do? okay, so we're talking about work-life balance, right? And if it gets to the point to where it was with Ted, like if that's what you're experiencing, then surely that scale between the balance of work and life will eventually find itself tipping over. Because when you go home, you're thinking about that job and you're all stressed out. And even when you're at the job, you're thinking about, if I lose this position, what will happen to my home life? And so that is really what we're talking about today. What would you do in that instance? So what did Ted do? Ted actually went to Dr. Epps. He petitioned him. He said, you know, I would like for you to do something. Dr. Epps did not. So he said, well, you know, could you please remove me from Dr. Cello's charge? Because at the time we had 3 area superintendents in Richland 1. And so Ted asked, could you please make a different one my supervisor? Dr. Epps declined to do that. So then what did Ted do? He actually sued him. He sued the school district in district court as well as federal court. How did that turn out? Well, I'll tell you that you'll find that out as a part of my next month's installment. I actually have this article saved in my arsenal of ethics articles that I keep specifically to remind me of the outcomes that can happen whenever we are acting unethically. And I keep these articles just for that reason, sharing with you to remind myself that I might look okay in garnet, but there's no way in the world that I'll ever look good in orange. I thank you all, and I'll see you next month.
When I think of work-life balance, a couple of images come to mind. One is the juggler with about 15 balls circling over his head, struggling not to drop one. Another is the tightrope walker on a windy day, trying to stay on the rope. As Bobby mentioned in the word or phrase of the day, work-life balance is such an important aspect to a healthy work environment as well as to a healthy person. Maintaining work-life balance definitely helps reduce stress and helps prevent burnout in the workplace. Chronic stress is one of the most common health issues that we have, but bless our hearts, we can find more than enough reasons to stress, even though we know that stress kills us. That's just one of the things that we struggle with. And we all have so many reasons why we don't maintain a good work-life balance. Maybe it's because we have increased responsibilities. We're trying to do more with less, or maybe we're working longer hours. And that became even more of a challenge as we went into a remote work environment and we're working from home. So there's no longer the commute or that separation of the office space to help us unplug and plug back into our families. There's a million reasons that we could come up with, right? You know, I'm sure we could come up with, let's say a dozen or two. But let's, instead of focusing on the justifications for why we do that, let's think about some tips for maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Play to your strengths, right? Don't try to be all things to all people. We'll never be successful at that. So find your strength and operate there, and don't waste your time on other things. And speaking of time, how about prioritize your time? Make a list of those most important tasks and knock them out in order of importance. Maybe block some time even on your calendar where people can't book you for a meeting, and make use of that time to be able to take care of those things that might get neglected otherwise. Because there's always a fire to be put out and there's always something else pulling at you. So block out that time for you and do what you need to do. Know your peaks and valleys too. If you are a morning person, bless your heart and I applaud you. Take advantage of that. If you're a night owl, make that work for you too. Plot some personal time too though. Know that you can't, as we said, you can't be all things to all people, and it's important that you take care of yourself. So set some personal time. Find something that you love and do that. Have set work hours and stick to them. That is especially tricky, but it's very important to do that. Find time for your finances. Work for your money and make your money work for you. So that way you're not really stressing over work when you could really take control of those finances and make a difference. Manage your time in the long term. Keep a calendar that reminds you of your family and your work commitments so you don't forget that important birthday or that anniversary. Don't want to forget that because you booked a meeting, right? That's a doghouse you don't want to get into. Make exercise a must do and not a should do. And as I step on my own toes there, right? A healthy body means a fresh mind, which means you're going to function better and you're going to complete your tasks in less time. So make time for that exercise. Take a walk, take a jog, do something like that. I mentioned it a second ago, but do what you love what you do. Make time for something other than work and give it the time it deserves. It's going to energize and refresh you, and I promise it's worth it. But be realistic. At the end of each working day, perform a little self-analysis and ask yourself, what worked and what didn't? But then the key part, make adjustments. So hopefully you've enjoyed and found some commentary today that things that make you go will make you go and take action. Until next time, friends, have a great day and keep that balance.